There may be no military base in the Roanoke area, and many people may not know just how extensive the veteran community truly is. Yet, as I have seen over the past year working on this film, the community is a vibrant one that deserves to be understood. I have had the opportunity to meet countless individuals along the way, and their hospitality was unparalleled. No matter where I went, I was welcomed with open arms. This project serves to bring voice to people who may not have been able to share their stories otherwise, to examine their past, their ideas, and their opinions. Simply put, this film is a means to preserve for future generations a sense of what the lives of everyday people who served looked like. Now, you will meet 6 of those everyday people, and they will guide you through their stories using their voices.
My name is Jacob Rusgrove. I was born in Rocky Mount, Virginia, and I'm 36 years old.
Kenneth Harrison Stallard. You want my birth date too? 12 June 1959. I was born at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland.
I'm Gregory Wade Shelton. I'm 76 years old, and I was born and raised here in Roanoke, Virginia.
My name is Robert S. Johnson, Sr. I was born here in Roanoke, 13 May 1940.
My name is Daniel Garrett. I was born in Farmville, Virginia, and I'm 51 years old.
I'm 53, Kimberly Kolb Aiken, and I was born at Fort Knox, Kentucky.
I grew up on a small family farm, and I just basically was raised on hunting, fishing, repairing cars that we had, farm equipment, As I got older, I always kind of had an urge to join, but my parents made it very clear that I was going to go to college first. It didn't have to be a 4-year college. It could be a community college and then enroll. I went to Patrick Henry Community College and earned my technical certificate in heating, ventilation, air conditioning repair, and I did that for about 5.5 years, and then the recession hit, and I basically walked into work right after the recession hit, and they wouldn't even let us in the building. They were like, sorry, we're out of work. I didn't have much of a choice because the only one really hiring was the military, so I acted on my feeling of joining. I fulfilled my parents' agreement, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I did.
I initially wanted to come in right out of high school. I was basically groomed to be a police officer. I have an associate's degree in criminal justice. Dad was a police officer. My older male sibling was a police officer, and I was kind of expected to do the same thing, but I just chose not to. I had applied for the Naval Academy, but my grades were just a little bit below the standard. And what they did, they offered me to go to the Naval Academy prep school in Newport, Rhode Island for 1 year, work on my grades, and then transfer to the academy. I was an 18-year-old knucklehead and didn't want to do that. So I moved to Arizona with my now wife and lived out there, and one day I just woke up at 25 years old and decided to fulfill my dream of going into the Navy. I went into the Navy March 26, 1984.
I joined the military in August of 1965, and although I think honestly say I've always admired a military career, however, I would have to admit that I was motivated by the draft. There was 3 of us that worked at the same place, and one day when we went to lunch, my 2 friends who both went through school with said they wanted to go up to the draft board and check their status, and they were older than I about maybe a year. So we got up there, and they didn't have much time to go, but not wanting to give this lady my name, I said, if I tell you my birthday, can you tell me how long I'd have before I get called? She says, sure. And I tell her my birthday, and she tells me, oh, you've got a long time. You've got 60 days. And whereas I said on the way up there, somebody said, let's all go join the Air Force. I said, I don't know about that. On the way back, it seemed like a really good idea.
Well, I had always admired people in uniform. I admired what they did. And I wanted to do my part. My dad had been in the Air Force during World War II. He was crew chief on B-24s and C-47s in the 5th Air Force in Asia. And as it turned out, I spent 13 months in that same unit, the 5th Air Force in Asia. But since my dad was in the Air Force, he wanted me to go in the Air Force. If you're going to go in, he says, go in the Air Force. So I did. I'm really glad I did.
Well, my father was a World War II veteran. He also served during the Korean conflict. That was really what he did the majority of his life. He actually served in 3 different branches of the military. He served in the Navy, then to the Air Force, and finally to the Army. And because of his service, I decided to also join the military.
I was 22 and I really wanted to see the world, and I also was an athlete and I want to continue my athletic career as an adult, and so joining the military was the right decision for me. Well, I was a marksman, so I'm a pistol shooter, and really the only place you could shoot pistols, there was no sponsorships or anything back in the 1990s, was for one of the military branches. And so I thought that would be an adventure. I'd also get to represent my country and just see how far I could go with that dream. I was in good physical shape and I didn't have any responsibilities or obligations, so it felt good at the time.
I served, originally got sent to Great Lakes for boot camp. I then went to Whidbey Island, Washington after I finished up ETA in Great Lakes. And when I was in Whidbey Island, Washington, I got trained for 2M micro miniature repair, basically a surgeon on circuit cards. That's what I do, I repair circuit cards. I ended up getting flown back to Norfolk, Virginia, and I was at NAS Oceana, which is a master airjet base. I did 2 years there, and then I got transferred to the USS Mahan DDG-72. My first tour was a med tour. We went to Crete, Greece. We went to Haifa, Israel. We even stopped in Portugal. We stopped in Sicily, sailed around the border of northern Africa. We did several boxes of operations in there, so whatever we got told to do, that's where we were. My second deployment was in the Persian Gulf, and it was hard. We had some people transfer and some other people had medical stuff going on and they didn't deploy with us. We had just enough in my division. I can't speak about other divisions. I don't really know the nitty-gritty about all that, but just in my division, it was pretty tough. And I held 3 critical NECs, and I had a lot of side responsibilities that I had to keep up with in order for the division to function as a whole at full momentum. So I wasn't the only one. There were others, obviously, in my division that were feeling that, but it was hard for me to get sleep. I got to the point where they had to issue out a sleeping chit for about 4 hours a day. That is a piece of paper that's issued from medical that gives that sailor the right to either not shave or they could sleep during a certain part of the day for a certain amount of time during working hours, or whatever's going on. And because I was having to stay up to 2-3 days straight in a row just to keep up the equipment. because the equipment's got to stay up regardless. And it wasn't until later on, I can't remember the exact range of time, but we had another person that was in training. We left before he was done with his training, which was on my equipment, and he wasn't going to be out until after we got into the med. So I had to cross the entire Atlantic and everything, keep everything up, and do the switch over with comms and everything else. It was fun.
I was in for 27 years and 14 days. I was on 8 different ships over 17 years sea time. Primarily, I was one of those sailors that really liked the Hampton Roads area. So I stayed in Norfolk. I mean, I went to boot camp and a service school in San Diego. But then once I got to the East Coast, because my family and my wife's family were both on the East Coast, so we just stayed there. But believe it or not, I had no intentions on making it a career. I was going to go in, do my first 4 or 5 years, and then get out and do whatever. I really didn't have a game plan. But then at the end of my first enlistment, I was married, I had 1 child and 1 on the way, and the pay wasn't all that bad. So, I figured, what the heck, I'll just re-enlist. And after that second re-enlistment, instead of doing 2 or 3 years, I would typically re-enlist for 6. So when I went in, and everybody during my time frame that went in, approximately around the same time, we were trained by primarily all the older Vietnam veterans. And some of them were very, very hardcore guys. They did teach me a lot of lessons. And they taught me how to do my job and how to look after the sailor to your right and the sailor to the left, the sailor in front of you and the sailor in back of you.
I was in for, matter of fact, I just happened to look at it today with these DD-214s. I was in for 9 years, 4 months, and 2 days. I actually had a very good tour both times. Obviously, I re-enlisted. It really was a pretty good experience. I went through basic training the first half in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, and then I went to Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I was there for about 10 months. I went to Ground Radio Communications Equipment Repair School and learned to fix radios and communications equipment. From there, I got assigned to Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho. Was not my favorite station. You were 12 miles from the town of Mountain Home and 50 miles from Boise, and there was nothing in between. There, they were teaching people to fly F-4C Phantom II reconnaissance planes, which were mostly going to Vietnam, and I worked on the radios that they'd use to talk to the airplanes from the air traffic control and the radar base. Most everybody at that base at that time was probably going to Vietnam or coming back, and I fully expected I'd probably go, and my dream sheet paid off. The dream sheets, when you say, where would you like to be assigned next? I said England and Germany, and I got an assignment to Germany. I went to Darmstadt, Germany, and was on an army post there, and we had a communication site there, and I was there for 2 years and really enjoyed it. I re-enlisted and selected to go to school again, and I went to Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas for some more electronics training. And when I left there, I went back to Germany, to Berlin, and I was in Berlin for 2.5 years. At that time, the wall was still there. If you got to be walled in, it was a great city to be walled in, but you couldn't go but so far. Where we worked on a garbage dump site, they built a radio center out there, and it was an interesting place to be. The only way you could go to Berlin and out to Western Europe is you either had to go on a U.S. Army duty train that could go through the eastern sector or on an airplane that had an American flag on the tail, which was either the U.S. Air Force or Pan American. So you were there. If the balloon ever had gone up, well, we'd have been toast. I mean, we were surrounded by Russians and East Germans, but fortunately nothing like that ever happened. When I left there, I went to Fort Meade, Maryland, and I was at Fort Meade at NSA, and for 2 years I did temporary duty assignments to various places in the world.
I first got into basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Did that, and then went straight to my language school, which is City of Monterey in California. Best place to be, I think. So there I was in California learning Russian, 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was Monday through Friday, and our instructors were all Russian or Americans that had lived in Russia a long time. So it was very immersive. It was very difficult. And I think 100 of us started in my class, and about 30 of us finished a year in. So it was a rigorous language program. It took me 22 months to get through. It's one of the longest trainings the military offers. So it's nearly 2 years. So by the time I got to my duty station at Fort Hood, I think I did another 2 years as a signals intelligence analyst before I had the opportunity to get to the All-Army shooting team. In basic training, which is most stark contrast, because that's where we were separated, we were in a building, I think they called it a battleship, and each wing of this building had a company of 60 soldiers, some of which in my starship were male. So we saw the males daily, especially in the chow hall. The most stark contrast I noticed was the men looked extremely scared, which I found that interesting too. They also stunk, which I know that sounds terrible, but they were just like not into personal hygiene. You would walk by a group of women that's been out in the field or been sweating all day just like the men, and they would smell like talcum powder. That's a subtle difference, but that's kind of tells you what they are interested in. They're interested in holding their femininity, even though they're in a green uniform that makes them not look like the gender that they are. That was my introduction to the two genders, the differences right off the bat.
Well, let's see. I served at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi for about 9 months. And then from there, I went to Osan Air Force Base Osan Air Base in Korea, not far from Seoul. I was there for 13 months. After Osan, I came to Fairchild Air Force Base near Spokane, Washington. And Fairchild was a Strategic Air Command base, B-52s, KC-135s. And I did temporary duty with military calls, TDY, at Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota, not too far from Rapid City, and also at Alson Air Force Base in Alaska. But at any rate, I spent a month in Alaska, and I spent about 6 months in South Dakota. And of course, my whole final 2 years were really based in Fairchild. While I was in Korea, my hair started to fall out, and the place stunk because the whole base was surrounded by rice paddies, and the Koreans fertilized with human excrement. So it didn't matter which way the wind blew. It didn't smell very good. Around May, I think it was, April or May, the North Koreans were apparently preparing to invade the South again. We were told there were about 500,000 North Korean troops massing on the DMZ, and there was a sign on that DMZ that said, "Live high, GI, in July you die." And so the U.S. military was obviously taking that seriously. So everybody would have to go through requalification with the M1 carbine, which is what the Air Force used at the time. There was a really good chance that the North Koreans could have come south, into South Korea, because Syngman Rhee was the president/dictator of South Korea. And there were riots, and college students were rioting, and some of his goons had actually shot and killed some of those students. So I guess that the North Koreans were thinking, well, you know, with all that disruption down there, we've probably got a really good chance of this is a good time to go in there again. We were going to be, those of us at Osan were going to be put into the trenches as infantrymen, but with about 1,000 of us and that huge North Korean army, we knew we weren't going to have a chance. They were just going to run right over us. And so we used to joke about it, you know. Each one of us said, well, I'm going to take as many of those bastards with me as I can, you know, before they get me. In June of 1960, there was a squadron of, can't remember the exact number, 6 or 8 A4Ds that flew from Iwakuni, Japan. That's where they were based, the Marine Corps fighter bombers, designed to deliver a nuclear bomb. There was a bombing range near Osan Air Base where we were, and they were practicing how they would deliver those bombs. Ultimately, the North Koreans didn't invade the South. I don't know why, but I'm thinking that probably those A4Ds practicing deliveries of nuclear weapons might very well have had a significant deterrent effect.
As I was in the military, I was in 2 situations where I was the only female. The first time I was on the All-Army pistol team, and the females that were there when I arrived left for various reasons. So there I was on a team of about 10. It kind of grew to about 20 in the summer, being the only female. I didn't feel like anybody treated me differently, except at the end of the day in a competition, I'd also get High Woman Award. You know, that I didn't have any different standards. You still had to shoot certain scores to make the team, stay on the team. Didn't matter if you're female or not. So that was nice. That's a sport. That's why I love the sport. It's a very it doesn't matter how tall or short or your age. It's a sport that anyone can engage in. That's why I love the sport so much. So that was the first time I was in it. I feel like I always got my own room. I got my own space, which was, I felt like very accommodating to because I was just the only one. The guys had to cram in, 2 or 3 or 4 into a hotel room, whereas I had, 2 double beds to myself. So I'd have to say that was excellent treatment. And then when I was in the reserves, it happened again. I was in a training unit. Almost everybody's background was infantry. So they don't have females. But since my background is in instruction and in marksmanship, and this unit specifically taught marksmanship to other units in the reserves, plus the kids that were between their junior and senior year of college that were going through ROTC. So I kind of got a waiver or a pass to go into that unit because of my background. And I think they thought it was novel that I was there, because the only females they had ever encountered were ones that did office work. They didn't participate in physical training. They didn't go out to the ranges. They certainly didn't get in front of the troops and instruct marksmanship. So I think I was quite a shocker for most of those guys, because they didn't sign up to be with females, some consciously, and they hadn't had any experience with females in the military. So I was like the first one for many of them to be around. But it's the best fraternity anyone could to join. We would have like a yearly picnic, and we just get to be with each other. I loved our annual trainings and our time off. Those were enjoyable because these are people that you trust in an intimate fashion, and you don't have to filter. Like, you are kin nearly forever. And so if anybody in my unit had a problem and reached out, we would all come running even today. and I've been out for 12 years. It's just one of those things. It's just a given. You were willing to let blood for these people, and they know it, and they were willing to let blood for you. So it's a camaraderie that is I haven't found in any other group. And I've been in a lot of different groups. I've been in theater groups, and I've been in sorority, and I've been in companies, but this is a different level of intimation.
I served a total of 14 and a half years, primarily in Germany. I was stationed in Zweibrücken Air Base, then Lindsay Air Station in Wiesbaden, Germany, Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. As far as the Army is concerned, I was at Fort Sill in Oklahoma. I was also at White Sands, New Mexico. Most of my training was done at Fort Huachuca in Arizona, and my primary base was in Heidelberg, Germany, with 5th Corps, USAR, and 7th Army. Well, I've had different jobs within the military. When I first joined the military with the Air Force, I was combat support. With combat support, we had equipment all around Europe. So week to week or month to month, you didn't know where possibly you could be. It was a very different time because it was right at the end of the Cold War, ramping up, getting ready for the desert, really. But most of us didn't know the desert was going to be coming as quickly as it did. But we had assets all over the place. So one week I was obviously in Germany. I could be in Belgium the next, the Netherlands, Sweden, Austria. Back in the day, we had things in Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, which doesn't even exist anymore, France, Italy, Spain, you name it. I've probably been there. So we just taking care of the assets that we had because we were considered front line to the Cold War. And shortly thereafter, when that job was kind of taken away, I became just a regular mechanic. I didn't like it very much, so I decided to cross-train into something else and became a crew chief. So I started working on aircraft as a mechanic. Being a crew chief in the Air Force, I'll tell you, that is one of the hardest jobs because you work the longest hours than anybody else. They're a 9-to-5 job, and our job is not until the aircraft is off the ground, so, and they don't care what the weather is. So I did that for a number of years and decided, no, I think I'm done with this. It was time for a change, so I did what they called a blue to green program, which is Air Force to Army. And so I took them up on their offer and became an intel analyst. Certain facets I can't speak to because that's the way the intel community kind of works. But some of it was, very easy. I would say between the Air Force and the Army, my Air Force time was a whole lot harder of endurance, but the Army mentally more challenging. One of my friends that I had known all my life, kind of going back to what I said, with different military things. I'd known him since we were 10. He was one of the first killed in Iraq during Iraqi freedom. This was, I'm thinking, around 2003 time frame. So when that happened, I was working, obviously, as I said, at Dover Air Force Base at that time. And Dover Air Force Base is known for being the mortuary of the military. So if you get killed downrange, they box you up and bring you to Dover. So I got wind that my friend Donald had got killed, and of course he was going to be coming to Dover. So I spoke to my first sergeant and was able to actually escort him from the base to the cemetery all the way. It was a very prideful moment for me to be able to do that, but very sorrowful all at the same time, because you knew exactly who was in there. It wasn't just any person. It was a good friend of mine. And when you've known somebody for 20, 30 years, that no longer is just a friend. That's more like family member.
While we were there, an A4 crashed on landing at Osan, and his landing gear gave way, and the plane cartwheeled out into the field, and the pilot was killed. I was on duty that night. I was in a crash truck, and we were ready when the aircraft came in. We were already in our trucks, in our bunkers, which is what firefighters call what they wear, and ready to go if we needed it. And the plane crashed, and so there were 2 crash trucks that we had there, and both trucks went to the crash, and we approached the A4 from 2 different directions. The big crash truck came in from the front to the nose, and the one I was on came in from behind it. And so we got out, and we couldn't get close enough. We were about 125 feet from the tail of the aircraft. We got out, opened up our handline compartments, took our handlines out, and the crew chief and the other hand lineman got hurt. They fell into a ditch near there. Both got hurt and had to go to the clinic. So I was the only one who got into the fire from my crew. And as I got near it, I walked up. I was pulling the hand line and passing the left side of the aircraft, but the pump operator had charged the line too soon. And at that point, it was so heavy I couldn't pull it any farther, and I wasn't at the fire yet. But one of the trucks that has the rescue fireman in it came, and one of them saw I'd be struggling with that hand line, so he helped me pull it up. So I'm right up in front of the nose of the aircraft, right at the edge of the fire, and I sprayed the fire I turned my hand line on, and I spray it, and I'm there for I don't know how long, just a few minutes. And I'm gradually working my way into the fire as I can knock the fire down and proceed into it. And finally, the big truck comes in from the other side, and with his big turrets, he was able to put the rest of the fire out pretty quickly. And the rescueman was standing right next to me, and he was banging on my hood. So I pulled it off, and I asked him, "Where's the pilot?" And he pointed down. The pilot was laying at my feet. And when I first got into the fire, I saw it, but I thought it was a piece of equipment. I didn't know it was the actual, it was the pilot's body there. So I had to stand there for 2 hours while the chaplain gave last rites to the pilot, and the corpsman, the medics picked up the pilot's body and put it on a gurney and into the ambulance and took him back to the clinic. And so all those 50 years plus that I used to think about it a lot. I wondered about the pilot. What was his name? Where did he come from? How did his family handle his loss? And I thought about it frequently. And so now I've been put in contact with the uncle. The nephew. And so the contact broadened with the pilot's brother and the pilot's sister. And so there were a lot of emails going back and forth for a while. And these folks didn't have much information about the crash. And they were just so grateful to get that information, to find out more of the details. But even more than that, they were grateful to talk with somebody who was there and who was a witness to the death of their brother and uncle, and to learn that how he had been so carefully treated, appropriately treated and placed on the gurney and put into the ambulance and taken away, and that the chaplain had given him last rites. As it turned out, the family is Catholic and the chaplain was Catholic too, so for them it was a great catharsis. And the impact that it had on the family to learn about all of this, it was really a very heavy one. They were just so grateful. I mean, they were crying and so emotional. And I've actually met one of the pilot's brother and one of the pilot and the pilot's sister. They came to San Diego.
I had an extremely hard transition. It was very, very hard on me because for the 27 years that I was in, I was told what to wear, when to eat, when to go to sleep, when to wake up. It was a very, very regimented scheduling process. I got out and just felt completely lost. I struggled in civilian sector with holding down jobs. But once I did secure a job, it was an outside job because I didn't want to be confined to a room or one building. Once we relocated here to the Roanoke Valley, I got plugged into the VA system, and then I was still a little bit lost, so to say. And I went to a Veterans Day parade, rode my motorcycle downtown, saw a group of guys, and lo and behold, it was the American Legion riders of this post. And so I joined the Legion, and life has been good. It's amazing because there's a lot of people who live here locally that really don't know what we do here. I've seen the wave of that changing. More people are coming over and calling, asking questions, wanting to know, what are you guys about? What do you do? It's not just the old stigma of the old timers sitting around a bar in a smoky environment and, shooting a breeze and things like that. No, we get out and assist veterans, help veterans, do what we can because we're a veterans organization. And me personally, the way that I look at it is the generations before me assisted veterans. Now it's my turn.
When I got out, I had extended my enlistment for this assignment that I had at Fort Meade, and I was then being given another assignment. And the job I had at Fort Meade, I was wearing civilian clothes, and I had an apartment downtown, and I think it was pretty good. And they come and said I was going to go and live in a tent up at Nam Kam Panam, Thailand, on the Laotian border. And I said, I think I've enjoyed enough of this. This is so I decided at that point, I've looked around at the civilians I'm working with, and I said, I think I can do something else. But as far as the transition out, it was just a matter of, I told them, no, I'm not re-enlisting. I'm going to get out, and you go through a process, a debriefing process when you get out, and you go around to each of the different departments and get signed off. You go to finance about your pay and file things, and turn in any equipment that you would have had and all that. And then your last thing, you go up and the guy signs you out and gives you the DD-214, the discharge. And usually, you leave, you've got some money in your pocket from, whatever pay you got coming to you. And if you had any leave time that you had not used, I think I had about 45 days, you get paid for that. So you're not in too bad a shape when you get out. I did unfortunately get out in December of 1974, which now's all history, but at that time we had just come through what the gas crisis, where the price of gas had gone up, and there was really kind of a recession going, and there weren't a lot of jobs out. But I was eligible to sign up for unemployment. I think I got a couple unemployment checks, and I found a job with General Electric, and everything was fine after that.
I actually did not retire from the military. I was honorably discharged. My time in there, it was good. I enjoyed it. There are a lot of hard times. That's just part of, any job. You're going to have good times, you're going to have bad times. So other than going to the VA and getting things taken care of there, I pretty much separated myself from all of it. I was like, I'm done. That's it.
I didn't really have any difficulty transitioning. The city of Roanoke wanted me to go to work for them as a firefighter, which I loved firefighting, but I couldn't do that and get a college degree. This just wasn't going to be possible. So I turned them down, and fortunately, I was able to start working at GE within a month of coming back after I got out, and I didn't have any problems transitioning into civilian life. Richard Poff was the congressman from this district at that time. And the interesting thing about Roanoke, this is fabulous. Clarence Caldwell, I guess he was the treasurer. He was a hard-nosed sort of guy. Well, I didn't see that at all. I was working at General Electric. I had finally gotten a job at night. That allowed me to come over here during the daytime and take the rest of my courses. And so I rushed over here with no preparation in September, just a week before the classes started. And I'm trying to convince Clarence Caldwell to let me start school here without giving him any money. He was putting up some resistance, but I saw a look in that man's eye, and I could tell he was saying, "Come on, young man, convince me." And I just felt so relieved when I saw that. He let me do it. He let me come in, and I started, and I gave no money to the college. Well, of course, GE was going to pay for a part of my tuition, but the main part of it, a lot of it was coming from the GI Bill. All the way through the semester, nothing coming from the GI Bill, and I haven't paid the college anything. And because of this, I'd gotten pretty familiar with some of the ladies working in the office. And then I would go in there occasionally and say, "Have you got any information from the VA?" They didn't know. So I called Congressman Poff's office and told him about it. And apparently this had been going on for some time. He had been calling the VA, the local VA, talking to the director of the local VA, and he was obviously giving him a hard time. And so I was walking through the administration building, and I'd always check and look at into the finance room there. And sometimes I just wave at the ladies. We were familiar with each other. And that time I went through there, and one of the ladies started motioning me to come in. So I went in there, and she was just tickled to death. She said that the director of the VA, this district of the VA, had called her and asked her, "Do you have a student there named Robert S. Johnson?" And she said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, tell him to get Poff off my back. His benefits are starting immediately." But imagine that. They let me come in here and not give them any money. And it was, I just loved to be in here. Beautiful campus. I just really have enjoyed it so much. I even had, I was given a key to the science building. I had a key to a lab, my lab, and I spent a lot of time here. And the school helped me. Without somebody helping me the way the school did, I don't know if I would have made it. So I really appreciate that.
This is all, this is what I know. And I prefer the military life over top of civilian life. I know my beard might tell you different, but I do like the military a whole lot better. It's more in tune with what I would expect things to run smoother for, and I don't think civilian does quite the job that they do in the military, because certain people are put into positions and that might not be a very good fit. And if you were in the military and it wasn't a very good fit, don't expect it to last, because the commander, the senior NCOIC, he's going to look bad. You're not going to make them look bad. Believe me, you won't stick in that job very long. So they'll remove you. Where here in the civilian world, you could do a halfway's job, and that's okay. As long as you're filling certain markers onto them, hey, you make me look good because I hired a whatever, and you fill in the blank, wonderful. And so they get to keep a job. But are they doing an accurate job? Is their performance really up to snuff? I would say in a lot of ways, no, it's not nearly as good as what they would have done in the military, because they would have had them for breakfast.
The local VA, like I said, I'm considered a combat veteran because of where I served. And you have to get a mandatory psychiatric evaluation, and that's to help with any mental health needs that a veteran might need when they're processing out, which is really nice. They also put you through basically a full physical. They make you go through everything to make sure that you're checked out. If you have any concerns or anything about any injuries that you might have or sustained during your time of service, they can address that and get that taken care of. They also offer help with any paperwork that you might have. If you have, through your claims, medical claims, anything like that. I think they might even offer, there's a legal end of it too, I think. I've never personally used it. Anytime that I've gone in there for care, I make sure I get in there at least for an annual visit, just to make sure everything's up and good and current, up to date, and they know where I'm at as far as medically checked out. The hardest part is finding a parking space close to the building you need to get to. Other than that, yeah, it's not bad.
I used the hospital for one thing, and that is, at the time I got out, you were entitled to dental care for 1 year from your separation. And I watched the calendar and made an appointment up here at the VA hospital to go get my teeth checked. And I went up, and they did quite a bit of drilling and filling, and that at no charge. Randy Davis was the dentist over there, a really good dentist, a great guy. And a little bit later, I had a problem with a tooth, and I went back up there, and I said, well, I don't know whether, since my 1 year's up, you guys will fix this or not. And Dr. Davis told me, anything we fix, we'll fix forever. But I would like to see that more veterans could use the VA facility over here and get the health care. Somebody that needs it more than I do. If you have a certain level of assets, or you have a certain level of income, you just don't qualify to get the service. Otherwise, I don't know that there's too much, if somebody doesn't get excluded by that criteria, it's pretty open to those that are eligible for it.
Over at the VA, they have very good veteran service representatives. It's like a service officer, but they are getting paid federally and just work at the VA. So they can have access to the veterans, and so the veterans can have access to them to help them with claims. Also, out in Buchanan, there's a place called New Freedom Farms, New Freedom Farms is owned and run by a retired Navy veteran, Lois Dawn, and what she does there is horse therapy with the veterans. And there's been many, many, many success stories come from that. I mean, they've had some failures too, because nothing's 100%. But that's a very good organization. Of course, you have the Virginia Veterans Care Center, which basically is a nursing home. They are located on the VA compound, but they're in the far back side of the VA. We do events with them. In fact, I'm currently working on an event for them to bring over a bunch of veterans, and our riders group is going to play a movie for them and serve pizza and some ice cream and drinks and things, just to, that'll give us the opportunity to, if they don't want to watch the movie, we're willing to sit and talk with them and play cards with them, whatever they want to do, but it all comes down to one thing: veterans helping veterans, and that's what we do. There's a group up on Bent Mountain called Frame, and I know the owners of Frame, and we have done some joint events here at the Post. Of course, all of us are, they're 501c3 TAC whatever, but we're all nonprofit, tax exempt organizations. If you can't find assistance, if you're a veteran and you can't find assistance here in the Roanoke Valley, you're not looking. You're not looking. We also have the DAV, which is basically right across the street from the VA. We have the AMVETS. We have the VFW. And there's numerous times where we have done joint events with them. Because like most veterans organizations, you might have a membership this big, but then you only actually have maybe that many that holds the organization together. So that's why we're always out there talking up the American Legion, talking up the VA, the AMVETS, the DAV, the VFW, because we're brothers and sisters of the same kind, Bottom line, we're all veterans. So if one organization reaches out to us and say, hey, can you, help us out with this? We have this going on, but we don't have enough volunteers. There's been several times where, we've gone over to help them out and they've come over to help us out. So, it works out well. Truly, my gut tells me, with all the mental health focus right now throughout the country, I think we really need to kind of shift our focus a little more to be able to get veterans pointed in the right direction. And from here, it always seems to be pointed toward the VA, where they can get the professional help and everything. But we've had times where veterans come in and they don't want anything to eat, they don't want any money, they don't want anything to drink. They just want to talk. And that means a lot. That means a lot. We all go through stages in life where, you have your ups and downs, maybe a death of a parent, a child, or, family member, or even a close friend. Even something as simple as maybe a family pet. And in turn, that affects us along with everybody else in a negative way. So if we can be, a little bit positive, give a little bit of encouragement, not just a standard, oh, keep your head up, it'll be all right, it'll all work out, sit and talk to them. Really talk to them. Don't just hear them, listen to them. Because you would be amazed at what little tidbits you can pick up to direct them in the right way. That's very near and dear to my heart, because there's a thing out there, it's an epidemic, what I call it, or refer to it as 22 a day. There's 22 veterans a day that take their own life from all the branches. And that's a big issue. So, you know, I guess to sum it up, the mental health issue, I wish there was more veterans in professional positions, because it's a lot easier for a veteran to talk to another veteran, regardless of what branch. It doesn't matter what branch. But I know myself, I feel comfortable when I go over to the VA and I have to go see, you know, a specialist in another clinic. I feel better when I see that little veteran's badge hanging below their ID that they wear, because I know right away they will have a really true understanding and get you the help that you need.
Well, I came from San Diego back to Roanoke 3 years ago. In San Diego, there were real issues with homeless vets. And you see them all over the place. At least a third of the people in the streets in San Diego were vets. And so they needed resources. They needed a place to stay, and they needed people who would make sure that they were given food and medical care as they needed it. And a lot of those vets that I knew about, I knew that they were able to transition. They were able to find jobs, and many of them, you know, they got jobs, and they were able to buy homes. And so, I don't know how many homeless vets there are in this area, but if there are any, they deserve that kind of thing. They deserve that kind of help.
I think here in Salem and the Roanoke area, we're lucky, because I think that the VA hospital here is a lot better than it is in many other places. You might hear it in the news that the VA is not, you know, doing what all they need to do for the veterans, and you get these horror stories that really come out of it. But I think for the most part here, I think that a lot of what we get from the VA here is comparable to what we would have probably got in the military to a degree. I know that they're working, you know, to improve the Salem VA. They've done a lot of upgrades, but it would be great to see even more upgrades, you know, more state-of-the-art kind of things happening.
Me personally, being a veteran, everywhere I've gone here in Roanoke Valley, I've had, you know, support. People, you know, they'll help me out with discounts, or if let's say I'm going to buy a car, they will work with me.
But bear in mind that Roanoke is not, well, every place is unique. Roanoke's a little different, that there are no military bases close to Roanoke. The closest thing we've ever, I mean, other than the reserve centers, the closest thing we've ever had, there was a radar station on Apple Orchard Mountain off the Blue Ridge Parkway, which has been gone for years, and there weren't, but I bet there wasn't 40 people stationed up there. So we didn't have a base. We didn't have what you might find in some places where there's a little contention between a base and a town. Roanoke, all we had is veterans who come back, they've served and come back, and I think I've always been treated well. I don't think, you know, it's not a lot of special treatment, but, you know, you get along. There wasn't any issues with the community here in Roanoke.
I'm frequently spoken to by people whom I assume must be civilians, and, you know, they thank me for my service, which is something I never heard until the 1990s. And I always appreciate that. You know, I think all vets appreciate their service being recognized.
You know, when we have parades around here and we're involved in them, you know, with either the Legion or the VFW or what have you, usually when, you know, the veterans are coming through, the entire crowd really gives them a big hand, and it makes them know that they are very well appreciated. And I think, you know, it's good to know that, you know, we do have a good population around here that is willing to take the time to say, you know, what a great job, or, you know, that the veterans have done in our lives and what an impact that it has made to them. So around here, I say that yes, that a lot of by and large, most of the people, civilian-wise, loves the veterans and goes out of their ways to show that they have appreciate it and everything else. You know, a lot of the restaurants and, you know, and it does not just the chain ones, but the smaller ma and pa shops around, you know, they definitely go out of their way and give so much off to the veterans, and, you know, make sure that they're taken care of and compensated one way or the other. So I do think that it is a good blend here.
Yeah, I can't think of a single negative incident. Not one. I've searched through my mind. It's just all been excellent.
If you're looking to join, I highly recommend it. Just know that there's a lot of what I view as unnecessary stuff that you're going to have to sit through, but it's all for a very big cause. It's you are doing something that is more than yourself.
No, I guess I'd say, speaking on behalf of the Legion, thank you.
Well, I think Roanoke Valley's done a great job making us feel wanted, needed, desired. I think Roanoke Valley does a veterans parade every year. There's Salem Red Sox has a military appreciation night that's a big deal. I think 40 young people are being sworn in that night. So it's a big deal around here. I think it's just a great thing. Military's not for everybody, but we can appreciate those that go in and appreciate those that don't, but serve in other ways. So I really appreciate that Roanoke Valley's doing that and has done that, and I don't think they're going to stop. I don't think it's a conservative or a liberal thing to do. I think it's just like, I appreciate you putting your life on the line for X amount of years for us. Appreciate that. And we all have that opportunity if we choose that path. And I appreciate the recognition. It's nice.
Don't look down on us, because a lot of people still, they may be against the military for whatever reason, for political or social or whatever the case may be, and they still kind of look down upon veterans, you know, because we went and we were willing to sign that blank check, you know, for our lives to, you know, make our country stronger and, you know, everything. I guess that would be the number one thing, and I'm not saying that they should respect us, but they should respect what we did for the country. You know, everybody has different opinions on everything, and I get that. I'm smart enough to understand that. But if they just respect what we did, I guess that would pretty much sum it up.
The people that I meet, if I'm wearing something that they can recognize that I'm a veteran, they typically speak to me. If they're treating veterans that way, I mean, you know, that's appreciated. I don't know what more they could do. My son came home from Desert Storm, and we picked him up at Admiral Baker Field in San Diego, and the first thing he wanted to do to go to El Torito's. He wanted Mexican. So he was still in his fatigues, his uniform, BDUs. And we went to El Torito's, and people were coming by and patting him on the shoulder and thanking him for his service. He didn't really like that. They were interrupting his food, his eating. But when I saw how they were treating him, that was the turnaround from the way veterans had been treated after Vietnam. And I mounted his medals for him. And he said, "Dad, why don't you mount your medals?" Oh, okay. So I did. I got out of service in '62. I didn't mount mine until 1990. I just tried to you know, didn't have anything to do with it or tell anybody that I had anything to do with the military.
I think that, again, you know, the veteran is one of the few people out there that are willing to, at one time, put a price tag on themselves saying, not limited to death. And so you're willing to give your all for another person's freedom. I think that that should always be in the forefront of any other person out there of going, well, what have you given? What have you done with yourself? I think, to me, that if you are a veteran in there, you know, find yourself a good veteran service organization, become a part of it, because that gives them, strengthens the voice. If they feel that there is something that they need to get off their shoulder, or they have an idea, well, they have more than just themselves to kind of talk about it to. They have an entire organization that might even be able to lobby for them in DC, you know. And so, you know, when it comes to just the other folks around, my thought is, you know, just appreciate, you know, what they have done for you, and I'm certain that they appreciate, you know, your appreciation towards that, because, you know, everybody enjoys getting an attaboy every so often.